All right, guys, a few things before we get started here. First, this is going to be a little different view. I'm not doing this video in vlog form today. I'm going to do this off a PowerPoint presentation. We got a lot of educational content going on in this video, and it's going to be nice to be able to see some visuals and stuff. And I don't have a marker board or anything. I don't really have a place to even put one. So we're going to be using the old PowerPoint. PowerPoint works pretty good. Hopefully it's good enough quality for you. Second, ignore this little guy down here. Screencastify. I've done this a couple times now. I'm not sure how I can get this guy to go away and not be in the video. So if anybody's a veteran of Screencastify, the Google Chrome extension, and knows how I can record my desktop without having this little guy here in the corner, then feel free to let me know so I can fix it for future videos. Third thing, I want to thank Google for sponsoring this video, all right? You're going to see in this video, there's a lot of these basic-ass stock images. It's just for some content, just for something to look at, so you're not looking at a white screen with some words on it. But yeah, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really go too hardcore on the pictures. I just kind of got some basic-ass stock photos. Anyways, not getting too sidetracked here. Today's video is going to be all about protein sources in your bodybuilding diet. We're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to be taking a look at some of the common protein sources that get used in bodybuilding diets. And then I'm going to kind of nitpick the shit out of them. And I'm going to talk about things that I really don't like about those protein sources. I'm going to talk about nutrition as a whole for a brief little bit. And then we're going to get into what I believe personally are the ultimate protein sources that you should be using in your bodybuilding diet. If you're trying to get big and swole, you know what I mean. All right. First things first, let's look at protein in a diet. So I'm not going to go too in-depth on this. I have a video on my channel, if you scroll back to one of the first few videos that I uploaded, where I go really, really in-depth in protein and what protein is and looking at protein from a molecular standpoint and all those kinds of things. So if you're really interested in that nerdy biological shit, you can go and watch that video. It'd probably be a good idea to watch that before this video so you can kind of get an idea of what protein really is. But we're just going to kind of briefly summarize some of the main points here before we get started. So we know that protein is an essential nutrient to your body. The main purpose of proteins is that they build and repair your tissues. They create enzymes and hormones. They're important building blocks for your bones, muscle, skin, cartilage, blood, etc. There's a lot of carrier proteins in our body too. So I think what's the point I'm trying to get across here is that protein is really important for bodybuilding because for building muscles and all that good stuff, whatnot. But it's also really important to understand that protein does so much more than that in your body. It is literally the building block of everything in your body. Skin, hair, nails, teeth, bones, muscle, skin, cartilage, blood. All of these things are created by protein. We've got carrier proteins in our body that create certain enzymical processes that we need protein for. So protein is actually so important that the word protein derives from the Greek word protus. And if you translate protus or protos in Greek, I don't actually know how to pronounce that word. If you translate that word in Greek, it translates as primary. So this nutrient is so important that it is known as the primary nutrient in our body, okay? So we're not dealing with small fish in this pond here. This is big shit we're talking about. Big fish in the pond, we're talking about protein. So because of protein's importance, we know that protein is non-negotiable for physique athletes to consume. If you do not consume protein, then you will make no muscular gains, okay? You'll make no progress. Imagine being in a bulking phase or a gaining phase. I fucking hate the word bulk, by the way, but we're going to be talking about gaining phases, improving, putting muscle on your frame, okay? And imagine you're eating 4,000 calories. You're in a caloric surplus. And between those 4,000 calories, you're consuming a bunch of carbs, a bunch of fat, and you're not really eating a whole lot of protein. You're not going to make any gains, okay? We need protein to build the muscle. Sorry if you guys can hear that lawnmower, the neighbor's mowing the lawn. Anyways, we need protein to build muscle. And so if we do not consume enough protein or we don't consume sufficient protein, we make no gains. Now, the amount of protein that we need to consume, this is something that gets tossed around all the time. Just based off of scientific literature, we see that anywhere around a gram per pound of body weight is probably going to be pretty sufficient. And we've seen some studies that see if you're in an extreme caloric deficit, say you're dieting for a contest or something, that you can go upwards as high as 1.1 grams per pound of body weight and still get some positive benefits from consuming that much protein. Really, anything above that 1 gram per pound of body weight or that 1.1 gram per pound of body weight doesn't really show any additional benefits beyond that point. If you're in the EU or anywhere other than the United States, we're talking about 2.2 grams per kilogram during most of the year. And in an extreme caloric deficit, we're talking about upwards of 3.3 grams per kilogram of body weight. All right, so let's look at some of the protein sources that bodybuilders typically use to hit this protein target. Because the thing with protein is most foods that we consume, they've got carbohydrates in them, they've got some fats in them, but they have very little protein, and especially the amount of protein that we have to eat as bodybuilders. If we don't make a conscious effort to eat foods that are high in protein, we'll never hit that protein goal. So let's take a look at some of the foods that we normally use to hit those. The most traditional sources that we see in most bodybuilding diets, whether you're a recreational bodybuilder, an amateur bodybuilder, and even upwards into the professional level, is we see a lot of chicken breast, we see a lot of egg whites, and we see a lot of whey protein. One of the other main ones that I kind of left out of here was turkey breast. In my opinion, turkey breast and chicken breast are interchangeable. These two foods are almost completely identical nutritionally. And so to differentiate from chicken breast and turkey breast would kind of be a waste of time. They're pretty much the same exact food. So while these foods do contain an ample amount of protein, they're not necessarily the ideal protein sources when we look at nutrition as a whole. And this is the main purpose of this video, aside from the fact of learning which protein sources that you need to consume. It's really important that you understand that there is so much more to food and there is so much more to the world of nutrition than your macros. There is so much more to the food that we eat than just how many grams of protein, carbs, and fats are in it. And when we look at the body as a whole, it's an extremely complex ecosystem, and it needs lots of vitamins and minerals to be able to perform optimally. Whether we're gaining weight, losing weight, et cetera, if we're deficient in these vitamins and minerals, we're really kind of putting ourselves in a compromised position, and we're fighting an uphill battle in order to reach our goal. So we're going to examine all three of these protein sources individually, and we're going to nitpick them a little bit, and we're going to talk about them. First protein source, the absolute most common protein source on the entire planet is chicken breast. Let's take a look at the nutrition of chicken breast here. Now, this is per 100 grams of raw chicken breast. 0 grams of carbohydrates, about 3.5 grams of fat, and we're looking at about 30 grams of protein per 100 grams of raw chicken breast. So those are the macronutrients. We're going to take a step deeper and we're going to take a look at some of the micronutrients. Now, I by no means included all of the micronutrients that we have in food. I just included the ones that I believe are by far the most important. And I'm going to get into each of these later as to why each one of these are important. So you're not kind of running around in the dark. But for per 100 grams of raw chicken breast, we're looking at about 36 milligrams of cholesterol, 23% your daily value of vitamin B6, 6% of your daily value of iron, 2% of your daily value of calcium, and about 0.9 milligrams. We're going to round that up and we're going to say about a milligram of zinc per 100 grams. Okay, so that's chicken breast. Moving on, we're looking at egg whites. In my opinion, the absolute worst protein source that can possibly be consumed. Per 100 grams of egg whites, now this is liquid egg whites or the egg whites that we separate from whole eggs, 0 grams of carbohydrates, 0.2 grams of fat, and then 11 grams of protein. Now, if you look any deeper than that at these micronutrients, there's literally fucking nothing else in egg whites other than pure protein. There's 0 milligrams of cholesterol, 0% of your daily value of vitamin B6, iron, and calcium, and hardly any zinc into where we get to the point where it's even... I wouldn't even consider there's any zinc in egg whites because the amount is so low that it may as well not even exist. Okay. Now, this is egg whites, in my opinion, probably one of the worst protein sources on the planet, if not the worst. And finally, going to take a look at whey protein. No offense to you, Optimum Nutrition. I picked your gold standard because it seems to be the most popular protein on the planet. And I think based on sales or whatever, it may be the most popular protein on the planet, whatever. Not going to nitpick this stuff, but let's take a look at the nutrition of whey protein. Instead of 100 grams, we're looking at per serving, which is generally 1 scoop. So per 1 scoop of whey protein, we're looking at about 3 grams of carbohydrates, 1 gram of fat, 25 grams of protein. Absolutely no cholesterol, no vitamin B6, no iron, a little bit of calcium because whey is technically a dairy product, and then absolutely no zinc. Now, it's important to understand that this is whey protein concentrate. If we start looking at whey protein isolate, or even one step further, whey protein hydrolysate, we're going to see less carbs and less fat in the total protein. And once we see the amount of carbohydrates and fat go down, we're going to see the amount of calcium go down too, because the calcium tends to be stored in the milk sugar, which we know as galactose. So as this number goes down, as we get more and more pure with proteins, when we take a step from the concentrate, we filter it to be even more pure to the isolate, and then we take that isolate, which is already pretty pure, and we purify it once more, and we get hydrolysate. We're going to be seeing almost negligible amounts of carbohydrates, which is therefore going to give us negligible amounts of calcium. Let me take a drink here. Oh, man. This talking to yourself gives you cotton mouth, I'll tell you what. Anyway, so now a lot of you guys, especially in the world of if it fits your macros, you're pretty in tune with the macronutrients, right? We know what all of these macros do: protein, carbs, and fats. We may not be very versed on how they work in the body from a metabolic process, but we know the importance of them. But let's take a look at the micronutrients that I listed. We're specifically going to look at cholesterol, vitamin B6, iron, zinc, and calcium, and why these things are important to have in your body. If we don't have these things in our body, we're going to have some negative health effects. Okay, so it's important that we understand that these things are extremely important. Again, like I said earlier, there are many, many other micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals that I left out on this video. I'm specifically including these 5. Let's look at cholesterol first. It's extremely important to understand that every cell that we have in our body, whether it be a muscle cell, a fat cell, or other, has a fatty membrane around it, okay? We remember this from high school biology. The major component of this membrane, what this membrane is mainly most of, is cholesterol. So the more cholesterol that we have in our diet, the healthier our cells, which will mean that the healthier our cells, we have an increased potential to grow and build muscle or lipolyze fat, okay? Now, we have been led astray in the nutritional world that dietary cholesterol is the same thing as the cholesterol that shows up on our lipid panels. And as of 2015, the FDA has come out and said that there is no upper limit to dietary cholesterol, meaning that we can consume as much dietary cholesterol as we want with no negative health effects on our lipid panel cholesterol values, which will be our HDL and our LDL. Which, not to get sidetracked, those aren't even cholesterols in the first place. Those are lipoproteins. So we know that cholesterol that we eat through food has no negative health effects negatively on our health for our lipid panel, okay? So if it has no negative health effects, and the more cholesterol that we consume, the healthier our cells will be, the stronger our cells will be, which will mean that the potential that we have to grow and make progress in our physique-related goals is increased with the amount of cholesterol that we consume. And as I said earlier, the majority of those foods have hardly any cholesterol in them. Chicken's got a little bit, but the other two have absolutely fucking none. There is nothing in those 2 products. Or foods, I guess. Whey protein would technically be a product, but I guess egg whites are naturally occurring. Anyways, vitamin B6. Why is vitamin B6 important? Vitamin B6 is a significant vitamin for protein, carbohydrate, and fat metabolism. So all of you guys that are super hyper-focused on your macros, which are extremely important, don't get me wrong, if we're deficient in vitamin B6, we can't metabolize those things properly. On top of that, it's significant to the creation of red blood cells. It promotes brain health, it prevents clogged arteries, and decreases the risks of heart disease. Now, Not only are these things extremely important with vitamin B6, our body does not produce vitamin B6 on our own, so we must be consuming it through food. And the proteins that I listed earlier, hardly any of those proteins have a sufficient amount of vitamin B6. Chicken's got a little bit, but not really enough to be able to warrant a sufficient amount of vitamin B6 in the body. Now, I understand that we can get vitamin B6 through other foods. I'm specifically looking at our protein sources here. Next is iron. Hopefully, we've all heard of iron. Iron is extremely essential for the production of the blood in our body, which is the main tool that our body uses to carry nutrients throughout the body. It's extremely important. Most of the body's iron is found in your hemoglobin and your myoglobin. Your hemoglobin is responsible for transferring oxygen from your lungs to your tissues. Your myoglobin stores oxygen in your muscle cells. We have approximately 1 billion people in the United States currently that suffer from anemia, which is the lack of iron. They are deficient in iron. I am sure every single person that is listening to this video now either has experienced some form of anemia at one point in their life, or they know somebody who has experienced a form of anemia in their life. It is extremely common. Again, with iron, if we're not consuming the iron through food, it is very hard to get it otherwise. Next, we have zinc. Zinc is necessary for the health of our body's immune system. It plays a major role in cell division, cell growth, and breaking down carbohydrates, which are our body's main fuel source for training and recovery from training. Zinc is needed for the synthesis of DNA, and zinc is also a natural testosterone booster as well as an estrogen blocker, assuming that you're deficient in zinc. Same thing with zinc. It's found mostly in food. If we do not consume it through food, the body has a hard time producing it on its own. And finally, calcium. I made a rant about calcium on my Instagram probably about a month ago. I saved it to my highlights on my Instagram page. You guys can go back and look at that if you're interested. Calcium is the most abundant mineral in our body. It strengthens our bones, it lowers our blood pressure, and it is the primary muscle that we use for muscular contraction, which obviously occurs a lot during weight training. Now, out of all of these things that I mentioned here, we can see that all 5 of these micronutrients are extremely important. Also, all 5 of these micronutrients are extremely deficient in the proteins that we normally eat. So the proteins that I listed earlier, chicken breast, egg whites, and whey protein, while they have the macronutrition of protein available, they really don't offer anything else to our body other than just pure protein. They don't really offer that much micronutrition, which, as I made evident earlier, is extremely important to the health and prospects of our body. So now that I just spent a decent amount of time taking a shit on chicken, egg whites, and whey, I'm going to get into some of the proteins that I actually think are worth your time consuming, and they are worth your money. These, in my opinion, are the ideal protein sources that we can consume. Protein source number 1, beef, red fucking meat. Now let's take a look at the nutrition per 100 grams. Now, for the sake of this video, I used flank steak, which is a relatively lean cut of red meat. I'll get into different kinds of red meat as we kind of go on here. So per 100 grams of flank steak, we have 0 grams of carbohydrates, 8 grams of fat, 28 grams of protein, 79 milligrams of cholesterol, 30% daily value of vitamin B6, 9% daily value of iron, 2% daily value of calcium, and over 4 milligrams of zinc per 100 grams. Now, all the things that I bolded here are extremely superior in red meat to chicken breast. Okay, we can go back and we can compare 79 milligrams of cholesterol compared to 36 milligrams of cholesterol. That's over double. 30% daily value vitamin B6, 23%, so about 7% more. 9% daily value iron, we've got 6% in chicken breast. And chicken breast doesn't even have 1 milligram of zinc, and our beef has over 4 times that amount at about 4 and some change milligrams of zinc per 100 grams. Now, it's important to notice that, again, this is flank steak. As we go into fattier cuts of beef, that's obviously going to increase the amount of fat, but that's also going to increase the amount of cholesterol. If we go to leaner cuts of beef, that's going to bring down the fat, but it's also going to bring down the amounts of cholesterol. Flank steak is a relatively common cut of beef that's used in bodybuilding diets. It's relatively cheap and it's relatively lean. So that's what I went with here was flank steak. So on top of all of these things that beef is superior to chicken breast with, beef is also a natural source of creatine. It's a natural source of carnitine. It has no rate-limiting amino acids, and it recently has been removed off of the FDA's carcinogen list. So I'm going to rewind. I'm going to talk about these things specifically. Hopefully, we all know what creatine does. If we don't know what creatine does, I made a video all about supplements on my channel where I specifically go into depth on creatine and what creatine does. If you want the in-depth scoop on creatine, you can go back and watch that video. Otherwise, the dumb man's version here is creatine replenishes the ATP cycle faster, so it allows us to get more reps during training, which over time will lead to more muscle. It is by far the most studied performance-enhancing supplement alongside caffeine, and it is extremely cheap. Now, yes, most people should be taking a creatine supplement, but if you're consuming enough beef, you do not need to even be consuming a creatine supplement. Carnitine. Carnitine is an amino acid that its main responsibility is to shuttle fat into the mitochondria so that it can be used for fuel. We see that L-carnitine supplements get sold all the time as fat burners. We know that unless you're using an injectable form of L-carnitine, the bioavailability of these carnitine supplements is usually pretty poor. But we can consume beef and we can get a large amount of L-carnitine through our diet and not need to use a supplement, specifically the injectable form of L-carnitine. Beef has no rate-limiting amino acids. So now this is an extremely complex thing, but I'm going to try and make this as simple as I can. And we kind of have to have a basic understanding of muscle protein synthesis and mTOR to be able to understand this here. But in a gram of protein, we have 20 total amino acids. 9 of those are what we consider essential amino acids, and the other 11 are what we consider non-essential amino acids. So when we take a look at those essential amino acids, those 9 amino acids are what are responsible for triggering muscle protein synthesis and mTOR. What most proteins have is they have what's known as a rate-limiting amino acid. So let's say we look at all 9 of the essential amino acids, and 8 out of those 9 amino acids, there's 1,000 milligrams of them present, and then the final 9th essential amino acid, we'll say methionine, and in this case, there's only 100 milligrams of it. So because there's only 100 milligrams of the rate-limiting amino acid, the body can only stimulate muscle protein synthesis as much as of the rate-limiting amino acid, okay? So think of this as your team or your chain is only as strong as the weakest link. You could have a metal chain that has these unbelievably thick and dense links on it. But if you have one link on the chain that is very weak and very brittle, it doesn't matter how strong that chain is because it's only as strong as its weakest link. We kind of have the same thing with muscle protein synthesis here. So if we have all of these essential amino acids present in large amounts, but we have one of those that's really, really lacking and it's in small amounts, we can only trigger muscle protein synthesis as much as that little guy. Now, beef has no rate-limiting amino acid, which means that we can effectively stimulate muscle protein synthesis to a higher degree with beef than what we can with chicken or any other protein source for that matter, because it does not have a rate-limiting amino acid that's holding back the process of muscle protein synthesis. So we can stimulate mTOR and muscle protein synthesis to a higher degree with red meat than we can with any other protein source. And finally, there's been a lot of talk about how the consumption of red meat is a potential carcinogen. This has been debunked over and over through research that saturated fat is not harmful for heart disease or any form of carcinogen. So much so, in fact, that in 2015, I believe it was, the FDA removed the consumption of red meat from the carcinogen list. Next protein source, salmon. Per 100 grams of salmon, I used an Atlantic salmon here. I understand there's different kinds of salmon, but the most common and, in my opinion, the most beneficial form of salmon is an Atlantic salmon. So per 100 grams of raw salmon, we have 0 grams of carbohydrates, 13 grams of fat, 20 grams of protein, 55 milligrams of cholesterol, 30% your daily value of vitamin B6, 1% daily value of your iron, 0% daily value of calcium, and a little over half a milligram of zinc per 100 grams. Now, why am I including salmon in this list? Salmon is the premier source of omega-3 fatty acids, DHA, and EPA. So much so, in fact, that if we consume 2 8-ounce servings of wild-caught salmon per week, that gives us enough omega-3s for that week. Now, if you know anything about supplements, again, this is something that I covered in my supplement video, we understand that omega-3s, the EPA and DHA, they cannot be created by the body on their own. They need to be consumed either through food or supplementation. And we've recently seen in a lot of studies and a lot of research that a lot of these omega-3 supplements do not contain what they claim they contain. So for the sake of mind, in order to get the same amount of omega-3s that you would get in an expensive omega-3 supplement, you can spend less money and get more omega-3s and know for a fact that you're actually getting the omega-3s if you just consume about 16 ounces worth of salmon per week. Now, most guys, they can divide that up into 2 8-ounce servings of salmon. If you're a woman or a female and obviously your protein consumptions are lower, you can divide this over 4-ounce servings per week. So you can get the same thing. 8 ounces of a protein source is a very large amount for most women. So you can divide this into 4 servings of 4 ounces across your week. Say maybe a Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday schedule for eating your salmon. So just one meal of salmon, either between 2 to 4 times a week, depending if you're a male or a female, is going to give you enough omega-3s to last you for that week. Now, these are all things that you can Google, but a lot of the health benefits of omega-3s I've covered in the supplement video. But again, you can Google them if you really want more. A lot of these include improved brain health, decreased inflammation, improved blood pressure, increased good cholesterol, which is your HDL, and then there's many, many more. The next protein source is Greek yogurt. So I used whole milk Greek yogurt in this example. You can use whichever kind of Greek yogurt that you want to use. Just understand that when you use different types of Greek yogurt, that's going to titrate this fat amount up and down. So per 100 grams of Greek yogurt, and again, I used whole milk Greek yogurt, we're looking at 4 grams of carbohydrates, 5 grams of fat, 9 grams of protein, 13 milligrams of cholesterol, 0% daily value of vitamin B6, 0% daily value of iron, 10% your daily value of calcium, and about half a milligram of zinc. So why do I think it's important to include Greek yogurt into your diet? Greek yogurt is the protein source with the highest amount of calcium. Go back a few minutes in the video to understand the importance of calcium. The type of protein in Greek yogurt is what we know as casein protein, which digests slower than traditional forms of protein. And in my opinion, it's best taken pre-bed in order to supply your body with a slow trickle of amino acids while you're sleeping, which is going to improve your recovery and prolong muscle protein synthesis while you are sleeping. Why this is important is because, as commonly known, most bodybuilders, especially pre-contest, they tend to completely eliminate dairy from their diet, which leaves them with no direct source of calcium, which puts you at a very real risk for osteoporosis. A long period of time without consuming, being deficient in calcium, it puts you at a very real risk for osteoporosis, whether that be now in life, later in life, etc. So it's extremely important that you are consuming a dairy form that you can digest well and provides your body with enough calcium. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, I have lactose intolerance, I can't consume dairy. It's important to understand that Greek yogurt is filtered. They remove a lot of the lactose from Greek yogurt. I personally, myself, do not know anybody who has a lactose intolerance who cannot tolerate Greek yogurt. Now, normal yogurts, obviously, we're going to see some lactose intolerances because, again, the lactose, if you remember, I said a few minutes earlier, lactose, also known as galactose, is this amount of your carbohydrates that's in your dairy product. This is extremely low. We've only got about 4 grams of lactose per 100 grams. And as you're going to see later on, I'm recommending maybe 200 to 250 grams of Greek yogurt. So we're getting at max 8 to 10 grams of lactose per day. If you take a lactate pill 10 minutes before you take your Greek yogurt meal, you're going to be perfectly fine. And finally, whole eggs. Now I used large eggs for the nutrition here. Now per large egg, we've got 0 grams of carbohydrates, 5 grams of fat, 6 grams of protein, 187 milligrams of cholesterol, 5% your daily value of B6, 3% of iron, 2% of calcium, and about 0.5 milligram of zinc. So whole eggs are the highest food protein source that contains cholesterol. And as we talked about earlier, cholesterol is extremely important for the health and the rigidity of your cells, whether that be muscle cells, fat cells, etc. Egg yolks also contain microdoses of androgens such as DHEA and testosterone. Now, yes, these amounts are very low, but it is important to understand that even though they're low, there's enough DHEA and testosterone in an egg yolk to facilitate life. Now, whether that be the life of, obviously it's not enough to facilitate the life of a human being. We're talking about the life of a baby chick. But there is enough of these androgens in there that can create life, okay? Animal life. Vince Gironda was a huge fan of whole eggs. He was one of the original bodybuilding gurus in the 60s, and he went as far as to say that eating 35 eggs a day is as good for you and as beneficial for you as a Dianabol cycle. Now, I think that's a huge overstatement, exaggeration. I'm going to put a video in the description of this video where somebody actually breaks down this whole thing, kind of give you guys an ideal or a different perspective on cholesterol in general. I can't remember the name of the guy off the top of my head, but it's a good video. You guys should be able to watch it, and you'll learn a lot from it. Egg yolks also contain a large amount of choline, which is a mineral that's necessary for DNA synthesis, the health of your nervous system, and many other functions. Those are all things that you can Google to learn the benefits of choline. So let's talk about real world application now. We've kind of learned a lot over the course of this video, I hope, but how do we really apply this? Now, first things first, I want to clarify that I don't think that chicken breast, egg whites, and whey protein are entirely worthless, but it is important to understand that they are far inferior to the other proteins that I listed. These proteins work really well when you're on a budget, especially chicken breast. Chicken breast can go as low as 99 cents a pound when it goes on sale, but even when it's not on sale, it's only like $1.79 or $1.99 a pound, depending on where you're getting it at. So chicken breast is the ideal protein source when you're on a budget. But if you have room in your budget, then there are by far way better options available. So let's talk about the ideal scenario and how we are going to kind of structure your diet with these protein sources. So in my opinion, the bulk of your protein consumption should come from red meat, as it's high amounts of zinc, iron, cholesterol, and B6, amongst the other things that we mentioned, are beneficial to both your health and your performance. I think you should be consuming a minimum of about 3 whole eggs a day, which is going to give you a lot of cholesterol. It's going to give you a good amount of choline. It's going to give you some vitamin K2, which is good for your arteries and for your health. You should be consuming about 16 ounces per week of wild-caught salmon. Again, we kind of talk about how you can divvy that up. 2 8-ounce portions if you're a male, 4 4-ounce portions if you're a female, and at least 1 cup of Greek yogurt should be consumed daily. Ideally, that would be consumed pre-bed, but you can consume it technically whenever. And that's going to help you hit your calcium threshold, which is going to help have your body operating optimally, amongst many other things. All right, guys, hopefully you guys like this video. I'm going to have a lot of links in the description to some videos, to some articles, etc., where you guys can take a look and take a listen into some of the information that I listed here. So you guys aren't just taking my word for it. You can kind of get some different perspectives on it. If you guys like this video, then feel free to drop a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in online coaching, then you can send me an email in the description below. And anyways, I will see you guys next time.